This is going to hurt. Not a fan of this nerf. Most of the time when I lose a big chunk of health, it's because I got knocked back, then piled on by other attacks. Getting one shot in is my only chance of retaining some health. Parries, gun strikes are obviously finishers help, but it's not always an option. If anything, I think the amount of contested health you gain from melee strikes needs to be buffed. I agree with that. That's a yes, that is a great point. But okay, let's continue the post. Surprised the heavy bolter wasn't included because you can sit there in heavy stance and that contested health bar won't move. Yeah, but the heavy bolter, that still requires like a build essentially, and the heavy bolter deserves it because it's not really burst damage. You can kind of just sit there and, you know, you rev up the heavy bolter. You get a lot of shots out, and I think that really helps the weapon gets the contested health back, because I've noticed that getting contested health back with auto weapons is a little bit easier now if you compare it to getting health back with what has been recently nerfed. And yes, we are talking about the added a maximum cap to restore fade HP per action nerf. The Melta rifle, the multi-Melta, the heavy plasma incinerator, and the plasma pistol are now giving you less contested health back per shot. And this is a PTS nerf. So this is a nerf that can possibly still, not make its way into the main game. And I gotta say, the thing is with this nerf, this is one of the nerfs where I understand it, but I still don't think it's very necessary. With what the post kind of details out here, is even if you can get contested health back, you can still go from 100% health bar to 0% health bar in a matter of seconds. It is super easy to get one-shotted in Absolute. So I really don't have an issue with how much contested health back you can get from weapons that aren't the most convenient weapons to use. That's the thing that's kind of bugging me, to be completely honest, is the Melta rifle, the multi-Melta. Both these get both these weapons have hard matchups. So there's really no reason to be worried about the contested health with these weapons, when if a zoanthrope spawns in the room and you have a Melta, no matter how much contested health you get back, you're still in a pretty rough spot. So you still have to play out of it. And when it comes to the Melta's specialty, which is basically tearing down mobs, that getting your contested health back is a big part of why the Melta is so good at shredding mobs. And the damage. The damage is pretty good. The wide area of effect damage is also pretty good. But you also have to consider the Melta in situations where, like Chaos, for example. Let's say you're getting a little bit swarmed, but you notice there's a Rubic Marine, shooting ranged fire at you. If you get hit by that Rubic Marine, and you want to get your contested health back with the mobs surrounding you, now it is harder to do that, which doesn't really make sense because you're playing within the strengths of the Melta. As far as the Melta goes, the adding a maximum cap to restore fade HP per action, that nerf on the Melta, I think, is very, very unnecessary. Now, the plasmas. The plasmas do not have the same benefit in this conversation as the Meltas. And by benefit, I mean matchup nightmares. When it comes to the heavy plasma incinerator, the plasma pistol, it's kind of interesting they don't have the regular plasma rifle here anyway. When it comes to these plasma weapons, they are very powerful. Very, very powerful. And I think the one thing about these weapons that obviously can kind of make it a little bit of a pain to use is the charge speed. And the plasmas already have a pretty aggressive charge speed, in the sense that you really have to get used to it to get good with the weapons. So these weapons still have some sort of skill applied to them, where, you charge your weapon and you try to shoot something from far away. Sometimes, you just miss because of the elements of the plasma. It has a slow, the plasma incinerator specifically has a slow projectile. The reason why I think the nerf here for the plasmas is actually kind of okay is the way you get your contested health back with plasmas isn't to charge your weapon. The way you get your contested health back with plasmas is to just shoot regular shots, because they come out faster and they give you a lot of contested HP. So I still think that's the way to do it. I still think that's the way to do it, because the way they nerfed the plasmas, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? Fine. One shot doesn't get me contested health back. as much as it used to. What I will now do is just shoot multiple shots and get as much contested health back as possible. So I do think, and not to mention the multi-Melta also has a pretty good fire rate. So I do think when it comes to the Melta rifle specifically, I think the Melta's getting hit hard with this nerf. The plasma weapons aren't getting hit that hard with the nerf. And not to mention the plasma weapons are already pretty good regardless. So even with the contested health nerf, the plasma weapons are still going to be go-to weapons when it comes to taking out majors as fast as possible, essentially. But yeah, with all of that said, I know, I played the PTS quite a bit yesterday, so I definitely have a lot to say about this nerf. With that said, I still don't think it's necessary. I don't think any of this nerf is necessary. I do think there's ways you can play around it. If you're not getting your contested health back as much as, you used to for one shot, just try to get more shots in there, and then you should be okay. But still, I still don't understand why they would do this. The only reason I would consider this is the fact that the Meltas are practically, you can't die in tiered mission weapons unless you run into zone thropes, even biovores maybe. The reason why I say that is because the waves in tiered missions, there's so many waves, so there's so many opportunities to get your contested health back with a Melta, and not to mention there's so many opportunities to just completely obliterate waves with the Melta. So I don't know. I can understand a little bit about this nerf if you think, hey, you know what, the Melta might just be an auto win when it comes to these tiered missions. But you got to consider zone thropes and bosses, and Meltas don't do great about that. It's like they've been trying to find ways to nerf the Melta since the launch, but I just think at a certain point you just got to realize that this weapon has bad matchups, and that's all the weapon really needs to be balanced, essentially. The heavy plasmas definitely are a little bit, or the plasmas in general, you definitely need to get used to. So I still think there is a sort of learning curve with the plasma weapons that, basically make sure that a nerf like this is slightly unnecessary. Also, consider the fact that, yes, maybe your charge attacks won't get you as much contested HP, but just, shoot a couple more times and you should be fine. So, okay, that's all I have to say, really, about it. I think it's unnecessary. I do think there's ways to play around it. I hope they don't add it. I do understand why they would want to nerf the Melta's ability to stay full health in Tyranid missions, but I think, again, a nerf like this is okay, against Tyranids, it's kind of understandable. Against Chaos, it's not understandable. So it's this is the weirdest thing about nerfs in this game sometimes, is you have Tyranids and Chaos. Not every nerf is going to play equally against both factions. This nerf feels okay against Tyranids, but against Chaos, I feel like this nerf is going to be a little bit heavy-handed. But we will see. Hopefully this is not something they add into the game. Melee definitely needs an increase. Even with perks to increase it, the returns are terrible. Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. They should not consider nerfing anything until they give Melee actually reasonable contested health gains. Because right now, it's you're actually losing contested health if you go for a melee attack. It's kind of crazy. Dude, it's so bad. It's so bad. Contested health for melee needs 100% increase. It needs a double. It needs to double the contested health you get for hitting enemies with melee. 100%. But yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this. I agree with this. I can't say it enough how much I agree with this. Heavy Bolter being good at restoring contested health is kind of Heavy's whole gimmick. His main strength is being able to sit in Heavy stance, eat attacks, and make back the health instantly. If he couldn't do that, he would be the weakest class in the game. Yeah, probably. The Heavy Bolter, I understand why the contested health for the Heavy Bolter should still rise very fast, is the fact that Heavy Bolter puts out good damage and has high fire rate. So yeah, essentially those are all you really need to get your contested health back. That's why the auto bolt rifle is pretty good at it as well. I bet you all the bolt rifles are pretty good at getting your contested health back, at least at the moment. The thing is, the Heavy Bolter, yes, high fire rate, high damage, get your contested health back. But yeah, the thing is, the Heavy Bolter obviously wasn't a subject to this nerf because you obviously need to hit enemies with more than one shot, I guess. I kind of understand the Melta, the amount of times I screwed up and got tanked just to blast once and get it all back. I get that one, but really the other ones, I don't see a big problem. Regaining health is a problem in this game. It fades too fast without the perk that delays the fade. Honestly, I do kind of agree with this as well. getting the bulwark contested health fade. Honestly, I don't even want to talk about it because at this point it's gonna be nerfed. Like, the devs are seriously, this is the one subject that we are just not going to agree with the devs on 100%. The devs like slightly acknowledge the healing problems in Absolute, right? And then they do this. It's like, oh my god. Hey, you know what? I'll give them credit for the health situation in the sense that they didn't fully nerf Icon. They didn't fully nerf Icon, but we still need advanced conditioning in Absolute to get to get contested health back reliably. There are way too many options. There are way too many options of getting like attacked and getting like hit down and just not getting your contested health back in a timely manner because your character's too busy trying to get up. It's insane. No, it's insane. Seriously. In Absolute, I get it. It's very tough, but like honestly, just giving us stims is still going to be just fine. Like if it wasn't for leaving out stims in Absolute, I feel like health economy in this game wouldn't be as big as a subject as it is right now. But leaving out stims in Absolute and then going ahead and nerfing contested health for a few options, it just doesn't give a good metric on what the devs are prioritizing right now as far as balance goes. I understand they want to make the game harder, right? But still, like, I feel like this type of change will definitely hurt newer players more than the veterans, because as far as veterans go, most of them are just running meta builds anyway. Most of them already have a dedicated bulwark on the team with advanced conditioning. So if your intention is to nerf people who are playing meta in this game, I just think it's going to backfire, because they're just going to find another way to continue playing the game efficiently. And then the nerfs that we see in the game is just going to hurt newer players more, basically, because they don't understand the systems yet. So they're going to be using the Melta, and they're going to take some damage. They're going to use the Melta, maybe they get one shot in, and they get like maybe half their contested health back, but they're still getting damaged. So I don't know. It really depends on how this plays out, but ultimately I think it's unnecessary. I honestly don't think it's necessary at all. But okay, let's continue this comment. What they should do is make melee a better option. Sure, there's more risk, but if it's a better return, we will get into it more. I'm not the biggest fan of the system in general, but I could get behind it more if the melee gave better returns. Yeah, I agree. If they're gonna go through with this nerf, they should make sure that melee gives better contested health across the board, and maybe even buff melee damage. Maybe. But nah, honestly, the Thunder Hammer is doing pretty good damage. The Chain Sword is doing pretty good damage. The Combat Knife is doing pretty good damage. The Power Fist is doing pretty good damage. The Power Sword, on the other hand, even after its recent buff, is still just a little bit behind. And I think if you wanted to make sure melee weapons get just a tad bit better without increasing their damage, make sure melee can get back contested health more reliably than what we are seeing now.